Hello, everyone. Welcome, Volume 3 of the Degenerate Gambling Life. My friends and I are going to be discussing kind of our strategy and approach to doing a startup fantasy draft. First, quick shout out to Liverpool getting the draw with Chelsea. Wasn't the win, but I'll definitely take that. So the way I approached my first round was looking at running backs, wide receivers. I went the wide receiver. And the way I wanted to draft my team and build my team for wide receivers in the first 10 to 8 rounds was they had to be under 27. And I really wanted them to have a clear path to being the number one. So in the first round, I took Jalen Waddle. He's shown what he can do sharing the ball to Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill said he's retiring at 30, and I definitely believe that. So I went with him. And then later on, I did veer a little bit for my number 2 wide receiver and went with Amari Cooper. But again, he has the upside to be the number 1 wide receiver on that team. So for running backs, I wanted them to have at least 2 to 3 years contract. So for a second round, I was really kind of torn. I went with Ramondre. I know they just signed Zeke, but I think Zeke should only get 5 to 8 touches, which leaves Ramondre getting 15 plus. That's with him catching the ball. I think that Zeke's only really going to hurt him kind of in the touchdown department, which hurts. But for Dynasty, I like the upside of Ramondre. I also went with Brian Robinson a little bit later. I think he's completely undervalued. So that's someone that I think people should be targeting. And I also went with kind of the crowded room approach for later rounds. You don't really want someone that's on a defined, such as Tolbert maybe for the Cowboys, that fourth wide receiver role. I like Sky Moore, maybe Richie, because that's not shaking out. Maybe Dobbs on the Packers. Anyone for the Bears backfield. Tight end, my approach to that was they had to be under 30. They need it to be where they at least flash. I'm going to say TJ Hawkinson, a name I said time and time again, but I also like Evan Ingram, the rookies, Musgrave on the Packers, some of them that have shown it. I think that's a good way to do it. Quarterback, my approach to that was someone that's a young gun. I took Herbert. I could get him a couple rounds later. Then the Patrick Mahomes. Then I wanted a old vet, maybe Russell Wilson, maybe Golf or Kirk Cousins. And then if you could, someone with some upside like Howe or Love, just kind of round out your team. The lottery tickets, again, I really want teams that they're just kind of a mess. Anyone on the Houston, because you really don't know how that's going to shake out. I took John Mechie. I think if you're looking for someone on Arizona, trying to see who it shakes out after Brown. So that's really what I'm looking for, is those teams where it's not defined and having those as a lottery ticket.
I didn't hear anything. You hear anything?
I don't know what he just did.
Sheila! Come in so much on the ground!
What's up, everyone? I'm Kevin Miller. In today's episode, Volume 3, we're going over our Dynasty teams and strategies. I'm going to dive in head first here. I think the main difference that people need to consider in Dynasty versus redraft is player longevity and just positional longevity. In redraft league, I'm usually targeting running backs and wide receivers early and trying to get value on a quarterback or tight end. But in a Dynasty league, a quarterback or a tight end could hold a lot of long-term value. My strategy, no matter where I'm at early in this draft, is to grab players who 1, 2, or 3 years from now are worth more than they are today. You could take a lot of guys like Tyreek Hill, Derrick Henry, Cooper Kupp, and really go all in and try to win now. But at the end of the day, you're just securing a 1-6 playoff chance at the title with a playoff spot. And you're really doing yourself a long-term disservice in a Dynasty league by drafting a ton of old players. In this particular format, it's 30 rounds, 420 total players are being drafted. I think at least 2/3 of your team should be focused on players that have not hit their peak. And I'll go over what that means in just a second here. So I started off my draft by taking Patrick Mahomes first round. It's about as safe of a pick as you can get. I think he's right in the prime of his career, and I think he could have a Tom Brady-like arc of a career, potentially another 5 to 10 years of quarterback one play. In this format, it is 6 points per passing touchdown. So I think having an elite quarterback that can get 25 plus points on a weekly basis really elevates your weekly floor, gives you a chance to win every single week. Second round, I came back around and took tight end Kyle Pitts. He is the tight end 1 in Dynasty in my mind. He's not going to produce the same numbers as Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews this year, but in a couple of years, I think you will see him being drafted first in every format at the tight end position. So I really focused on drafting players in the beginning that haven't hit their peak, that are going to retain the value that I'm paying for them today. Once you get past the first 10 rounds or so, that strategy starts to change, and I start to look for players that can be good for parts of the season, maybe older veterans like Melvin Gordon or Kareem Hunt, guys that are not going to be first-round running backs a year or two from now, but could be RB1s for up to a month or two of the season if things go right their way. And I'm really also focusing in the second half of the draft on players that are going to retain value, such as a defense and special teams. In 5 years, the Commanders' defense is still going to be the Commanders' defense. Sure, they might be better or worse, and their value might be slightly lower or slightly higher, but they will still have a definitive value 5 to 10 years from now. Not a bad idea to start hoarding defenses in the middle stages of a startup dynasty draft. Keep that in mind for yours. The last thing I'm considering in the late portion of this draft is just pure lottery tickets that might not be on my roster in 1 to 2 months, but might be in my starting lineup for 1 to 2 months. Perfect example is running back Degenerate Prince on Kansas City. Kansas City took a 7th round running back last year and made him an every week starter. Never know, if things break right, that could be that type of pick again for them. So I think early on you want to focus on players who haven't hit their peak, because you want to retain the value of your team multiple years from now, if not increase the value. Not every pick in the middle stages needs to be a home run hit or a player that hasn't hit their peak yet. You can start to shift your focus on players who will retain value, have a higher floor, maybe not as high of a ceiling, but it can really balance out your team and give you some depth that you will need not just for the season, but for the next few seasons in this dynasty format. And lastly, in the later stages, go ahead and swing that bat. Half these guys in rounds 20 through 30 are not going to be on your roster in 1 to 2 months from now. Whether you're trading, using the waiver wire, you will find replacements for 5 or 10 guys on your team this year, no matter how well you drafted. So just in summary, in a dynasty format, I think you should focus on players who haven't hit their peak yet. And if you're doing the same draft this time next year, focus on players who could be going earlier next year than they are this year. I'm Kevin Miller. We are the Degenerate Gambling Life. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Until next time.
What's up, guys? My name is Jacob Listowski with the Degenerate Gambling Life. I recently took part in a Dynasty startup draft with my friends Josh and Kevin. It's a 14-team league with full PPR, and I did the draft with my brother Paul. Our draft strategy was to pick young players that are dynamic, that can give us production now, and also young players that can develop into quality players and stars down the road. With our first pick, we took Breece Hall of the New York Jets. We had the number 11 pick in the draft. And at just 22 years old, he felt like the right pick here. This guy's a dynamic runner who averaged 5.8 yards per carry last season before his ACL injury. And I know running backs coming off of ACL injuries typically don't do well their first year back, but this is a long-term investment, and we think he's going to give us good production, at least in the second half of the season, and definitely for the long term. With our second pick, we rounded out our backfield with 24-year-old Jonathan Taylor. I know there's concerns about his holdout and where he's going to be, but that doesn't really concern us too much because wherever this guy goes, we know he's going to be a stud. This is a guy that's averaged over 5 yards per carry for his career, and also he's averaged 2 yards per carry after contact every season of his career. So no matter where he goes, he's going to earn those extra yards for himself. So we felt very comfortable drafting him in the second round. Once we got our backfield set with those 2 young studs, we thought it was time to go for some receivers, and we took receivers in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 7th round. In the 3rd round, we took 24-year-old T. Higgins from the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a guy that looks poised to have a breakout season, and in future years, he could leave the Bengals to go somewhere else to become a number 1 wide receiver there. So we felt like that was a good reason to take him. In the 4th round, we took 27-year-old Deebo Samuel, who we think can give us production now. And, both these guys being in elite offenses, I feel like they're good building blocks for now and for the future. In the 5th round, we took Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. He's a very promising rookie who we're hearing very good things about coming out of camp in Baltimore. We think that he can be a good foundational piece for us in the flex position for a long time and eventually become one of our top 2 receivers. And in the 7th round, we took Kadarius Toney of the Chiefs, who has the potential to be the number 1 receiver in the Chiefs offense. That's going to be a dynamic offense for a long time to come. So we liked putting a 7th round investment in him. Our quarterback strategy revolved around taking Anthony Richardson in the 6th round. This guy is as big of a boomer or bust prospect as there has been in recent memory. But if he puts it all together, he has all the physical tools to be an elite quarterback. This guy has QB1 upside every single season and is a guy that could give us multiple finishes in the top 5 at the QB position over time. We think that this guy could be an elite quarterback for over a decade for us if he can make it work. As our insurance, we drafted Bryce Young in the 10th round, who we also feel like could develop into a great quarterback in this league. He's making some amazing throws at Panthers camp, and he looks every part a superstar quarterback. So the plan is for one of those guys to pan out in the future and be our long-term solution at quarterback. For this season, if those guys don't develop right away, as a lot of rookies don't, that's okay because we drafted Ryan Tannehill as our insurance. With a improving Titans offense, he added DeAndre Hopkins. He should be poised to bounce back a little bit this season, so we feel pretty comfortable at the quarterback position. Our strategy at the tight end position was to draft a lot of young tight ends with potential. We did deviate from that strategy a little bit with our first tight end that we took in the 9th round, which was Dalton Schultz. Although he is only 27 years old, and he's going to be one of the main options for the Texans passing offense. So we do think he's going to give us good production this year and over time as we wait for our other tight ends that we drafted to develop. In the 14th round, we selected Darnell Washington of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy is an absolutely massive tight end out of Georgia. He is 6'7" and over 260 pounds. And I think he's going to develop into a very good tight end in this league. We also drafted Jelani Woods of the Colts in the 22nd round. This is another 6'7" tight end who actually had pretty good production last season with 3 touchdowns and finishing tight end 32 in PPR. Then we took Noah Gray, the backup of Travis Kelce, in the 25th round. He's only 24 years old, and this guy's actually had pretty good production when he's gotten playing time. So we like his future potential as well. And then we took Logan Thomas in the 27th round and Peyton Hendershot in the 30th round to round out our tight end position. Some sleeper players who we picked up that I really like include Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a guy who averaged 4.9 yards per carry last season, and he just really jumps off the tape when you watch him play. He's also good at converting his targets into catches, catching 28 out of his 33 targets last season. This guy could give you really good production in PPR if he gets some opportunity, and he's only a Najee Harris injury away from getting that opportunity. He's only 24 years old, and I think he could really develop down the line. Some other guys that we picked up include Wan'Dale Robinson in the 13th, Xavier Hutchinson in the 16th round, Isaiah Hodgins in the 18th round, and Pierre Strong in the 19th. What's up, guys? This is a poker hand that I played out of Shuffle 512 in Austin, Texas. We're playing 1-2, and the effective stacks are $310. I'm in early position with Ace of Hearts, King of Diamonds. I raise to 15 and get called by the cutoff and big blind. So the pot is now $45 going to the flop, which comes Ace of Spades, Deuce of Spades, Jack of Diamonds. So I make top pair, top kicker, and I bet $30, wanting to bet 2/3 pot to charge spade draws and bigger and smaller aces. So here I'm looking to get value from those aces and those spade draws. The cutoff calls next to act and the big blind folds. So I'm thinking here the cutoff is going to be folding a lot of his Jack X and a lot of his Deuce X. So he either will usually have an ace or a spade draw. So I'm thinking bet big on the turn. The turn comes a Jack of Hearts, which shouldn't improve him too often because he's going to be folding most of his Jack X hands unless he happened to have Jack X of spades. So I bet $70 and the cutoff calls. That brings the pot to $245. At this point, I still think he either has an ace or a spade draw, and the river comes the Deuce of Hearts. At this point, I have a choice to make. Do I want to go for max value against another ace, or do I want to check? And I think it's a little bit better to check here because if he has another ace, he might be able to get away thinking I could have a boat, even though I won't have too many boats here myself. I don't think he has a lot of boats here either as played, so I check. The cutoff jams for $195. I tank for a little bit, and I do flick in the call and scoop the $635 pot when he shows the King 6 of Spades, for the busted spade draw, and he was going for the bluff, and we caught him this time. That was a nice hand.
All right, now we're going to jump into a poker hand. Again, we're going to talk more theory. This, we're really going to drill down to the mistake that I made on the turn with my betting. I think that's something that I kind of struggle with, and a lot of people do, which is how to maximize their bets and get the most they can. So with this hand, I'm under the gun. I look down at Queen Jack, and I make it $13. Two players call, and the small blind makes it 50. Now, to give you some context, the hand before, I'd made it 13, and the time before that, someone ran over me. They made it 75, and I fold it. And so this time, I should fold the Queen Jack suited, but I get a little sticky, which ultimately that's a mistake because I knew I was beat, and it's just one of those things where you got to be able to make those disciplined laydowns. But again, I got sticky and I made the call. The flop came Queen of Spades, 9 of Clubs, 3 of Hearts. The small blind again makes it 35. I flat because I got a piece of it now, and the turn comes the Queen of Hearts. Now they make it 100. I think about it because after I called 100, it only leaves me with 160s, so I'm thinking what I should do here, and I ultimately jam it all in, and they go into the tank for quite a bit, and they fold. They tell me later that they had pocket kings, and I think it's just a mistake, me jamming right there, because he was betting into me. There's no point in me not giving him a chance to bet into me on the river. And so that's where I talked out with Kevin and Jacob, who, how we all met was playing poker, and they all agreed that it was a mistake, and we all make them, and that's why we're sharing stuff like that. So in the long run, the two mistakes I made was getting stubborn with Queen Jack pre-flop, especially when I knew I was beat, and then jamming there on the turn when there really wasn't a point in it, and I could have just flatted. And if he checks me on the river, then I get the last 160 in, but at least I give him a chance where, maybe he goes all in on the river and I just snap call. So those are those kind of mistakes. Now, for the old fashions, I go a little bit different than most. Most people like Woodford's, Whistling Pig. I personally like a brand called Tin Cup. It's really good, has a sweet finish, so that's why I recommend with that.
I'm from the Midwest, so the only good old-fashioned is a brandy old-fashioned.
We're making a brandy old-fashioned. First things first, you gotta have the proper tools. Buck knife, a hammer, we'll get to that later, and brandy, of course. Know you got the right brandy if it looks like it came in a mouthwash container.
Now I'm going to kind of tease next week. There's some big action going on. Zeke signed, Dalvin Cook signed. So my boys will be talking about that, kind of going in how it affects other teams like the Dolphins. I'm going to throw out a little bit of fantasy baseball, so we're not always talking the same thing. And of course, we'll have a little bit of poker talk. I'm actually going to be in St. Louis this week. So if you're in that area, I think I'm going to play at OmniStar. So Thursday and Friday, try to find me sometime after 7. I'll either have a Liverpool or a Yankees hat on. So come up to me and say hi if you're in the St. Louis area. And if not, look forward to your guys' comments on Volume 3. And of course, like, comment, subscribe, and share. All right, thank you all.